Can you imagine living in a community free of violence, where love is overflowing, everybody looking out for one another? How amazing would that be? Now, take a look around you, specifically to the one sitting right next to you. Kind of lean in, give a compassionate smile. Because statistically speaking, 1 in 3 of us has or is currently experiencing domestic violence. See, I believe that we can eradicate domestic violence victims and increase survivors through a community of support. If you've ever been isolated, hurt physically, financially, or emotionally by a loved one, chances are you could be that one. Did you know that in the 1800s, it was legal for husbands to beat their wives with a stick? As long as that stick did not exceed the width of his thumb, it was legal. And that was the birth of the phrase, rule of thumb. And it wasn't until the 1920s that that same law was made illegal. So that was a win, right? And then in the 1970s, which a lot of good things came out of the 70s. Me for one. But the Justice Department finally deemed domestic violence a criminal act and not a family matter. So that was a huge win, right? We've made a lot of progression since the beginning of time with all the injustices associated with domestic violence. But we still have a ways to go. Now, in the spirit of strolling down memory lane, it was in the early 2000s, on 495, I was in a black jail prison. Yes, a prison. And me and my girls were riding down 495 in the DC area, heading to church on a nice spring, early evening where transition season, right? The windows were cracked and the nice crisp air was coming through, and we're riding and we're enjoying life, celebrating the fact that we're together again. See, when I say my girls, I'm talking about my daughters, because we had spent years, well, I was in a domestic violent relationship and I exposed my girls to that. So we were in a domestic violent household for years. Now, this is like a year out of that. So we're celebrating, riding down, listening to music, and a song comes on, Destiny's Child. We turn up the music. Now that you're out of my life, I'm so much better. Thought that I'd be weak without you, but I'm stronger. I'm a survivor. I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna work harder. Now, we could have swore we were Destiny's Child ourselves, right? We're jamming and we're just enjoying life, right? And I'm driving, and at this time, we're on our way to church because I found church to be my safe haven, my healing, place during this time. So it was helpful. We were on our way to church, and as we're singing at the top of our lungs, we're driving and going into the parking lot. And as we pull into the parking lot, the girls are still singing. And as soon as I pull in, turn the music down, I see to the right the silver Tahoe. And immediately my heart dropped. And I could hear my heart beating, because I knew that this was my ex's truck. And as I'm driving, the girls are still singing. all these thoughts are running through my head, and I'm like, how in the world did my ex even find me? Like, I'm at church. How in the world? What? Because nothing ever has been good about seeing this silver Tahoe. So I finally park, turn the car off, and I start fumbling around in the car, and I told the girls, go ahead in, you guys are gonna have to go ahead in. Without me, I come in right behind you. And as I'm saying this, my ex comes and parks right next to me. My oldest is in the front seat. She looks and sees the vehicle, and she knows. And she looks at me, and I put on the strong, confident, protective mother face. It's okay. Go ahead, take your sister, go inside the church. I'll be in there. And reluctantly, she goes, takes her sister by the hand and go in the church. And before I could even get my door all the way open, my ex slings the door open, pulls me out, and immediately I'm met with hostility and rage. Going through my car and, where's your phone? I know you're ignoring me. And see, at this time, I've gotten used to not carrying my phone because that's how my ex found me before. So I didn't even have my phone. And I'm like, what are you talking? I don't know what you're talking about. You know, and all this hostility and going back and forth. And I'm standing there, and all I was tired. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to argue. I'm at church. So I'm sitting there, and my ex is trying to get me to get into the truck. And I'm like, I'm not going to get into the truck. But I talk to you. No, get in the truck. And I refuse. My refusal caused more anger and rage. So my head gets slammed against the rail of the truck. One time. I'm like, I'm not going to go in. Slam again. 2 times. More refusal. So I get slammed onto my car. Then slammed onto the pavement of the church parking lot. And as I'm laying there, my ex's knees are in my chest, hands around my throat, head being banged on the ground. And I don't want to fight. I'm tired of fighting. And all I could think of is if I die here, at least my girls will be okay. Somebody will look after them. They'll be taken care of. They won't have to worry about this anymore. And as I lay there, everything goes black. And the crazy thing about this moment is because if I was going to die, I didn't think it was going to be there. Because as I said, me and my girls had reunited, right? I had deployed overseas during the Iraq War during this time, right? So if I was going to die anywhere, I would have thought I would have died there, not here on a church parking lot. But the funny thing also, as research kind of showed, is during that time, it was reported that we lost 6,488 American troops to that war. Now, during that same time period, it was reported 11,766 individuals were lost as a result of domestic violence. That is insane. That is almost double the casualties in war. Domestic violence is a global civil war. Now, I hear all the time people throw around the phrase, all is fair in love and war, right? But I'm really curious. All the loss that we experience during war or love, is that fair? Now, an author said, war does not determine who is right, only who is left. We are literally fighting for our lives. Now, you may think that you can't do anything about domestic violence, right? Like, oh, this isn't my fight, or anything like that. And there's all these stereotypes that come along with the idea of what domestic violence looks like. We think a lot of times it's adult male-female relationships, correct? My first domestic violent relationship, I was a teenager. And that brutal ex that you guys heard almost killed me, that was a female. So domestic violence comes to the young, the old, the straight, the LGBTQ community. It is all over. It is happening in your neighborhoods, in your schools, in your communities. It's happening everywhere. Now, you might be wondering, well, what happened? Yeah, I mean, clearly I'm alive, right? But I want to tell you something that changed my life. When I opened my eyes from that devastating blackout, I opened my eyes to a police officer, EMS, flashing lights everywhere. And the police officer said, someone called. The fact that someone called made a huge difference for me. See, because when you're in a domestic violent relationship, the isolation that you feel is so real. And for years, I had been in isolation. I was separated from friends who thought I was stupid for staying with the person. I was too embarrassed to go to my family. So to know that someone called, because normally if someone called the cops, it was myself or my daughters. Everyone else turned their back. Oh, I don't want anything to do with that. So when I opened my eyes to a new life, a new way of looking at people, because it meant someone actually cared. I was not in this by myself anymore. So, I beg you, if you see something, say something. Because we're stronger together. Now, I transitioned from a survivor to a thriver. But I only did it through a community of support. Now, communities are not limited to just four walls or little groups here and there or even blocks. A community is when you lock arms together with the person who believes in the same thing that you believe, and you're striving for the same goal. So Sun Tzu said, those who are victorious plan effectively and change decisively. Decisive change can, in fact, be made, you guys. But it's only going to take us being together. Because when we do that, we not only will survive, but we will absolutely thrive.